Hi, okay, so I've previously sanded this reed to the point of the initial crow, and I've let it stand in the reed rack for a few days now, so it's well and truly dried out. And the result is, in this case, that it no longer crows. So if I suck on it, nothing. But that's not it's not unusual. So I'm going to sand it down now. This part of the operation is best done by hand, really. I need to, first of all, soften this part of the reed here, the back part of the reed, closer to the bridle. I want to avoid the part from here towards the lips at this moment in time. So if I lay it onto the sanding tay pad here and then lean it backwards this way, so I'm avoiding the tips. I mean, not as much as I'm showing you here, but that's the principle. So I'm sanding at the back end of the reed. So I'll be using, at this point, I might be using 120 grit sandpaper, not too coarse, not too fine, but coarse enough to take off a fair bit of material. So all the time working on both sides of the reed simultaneously. And come back and give it a suck. Okay, so I've got a squeak there. It's sort of crowing, but there's a high-pitched squeak in the background, which tells me that it still needs more taking off the back end of the reed here. It's still too hard. Turning it over all the time and doing the same on both sides of the reed. Give it a suck through the reed to test the crow, and it's still giving a high pitch squeak in the background, so I'll keep sanding until that squeak's gone, basically, in this case. Starting to sound, and the softer the reed gets at this point, the easier it'll be to suck through the reed and get a tone out of it. So still fighting back. I'm also keeping an eye on the tips of the reed here, because I don't want to sand too much off at this point, but I also want to keep both sides even all the time. I'm actually avoiding the tips at this moment in time, but I'm still keeping an eye on them just in case I'm taking too much off. So this is starting to form a U shape now down the bottom of the reed rather than a straight V, and it's starting to make a more consistent sound. So I might now have a little go at the tips of the reed. Now I personally use a magnified light so I can see exactly where, so at this, where I need to take the material off. At this point I'm working on the tips of the reed now with a finer 240 grit sandpaper. I don't want to take much off, I just want to slim down the mouth of the reed, or the lips of the reed. And just have a little sand, and then have a little look, and I'll check it underneath the magnifying light at the same time. And again, at this point I'm actually working on the whole length of the reed, but I'm putting a little bit more pressure on the front end of the reed so that it is tending to work on the tips as well. This is only very light, I'm not putting a lot of pressure on because I really don't want to take too much off at this stage. I want a really nice even thickness of the tongues all the way across. And when I squeeze the reed sideways like this, laying pressure on in this direction and sideways, I can see that the mouth of the reed is opening up consistently, a nice sort of eye shape. So it's looking good. And again, we do a little bit of work on one side and come and do a little bit of work on the other side, and just keep an eye on where there's any extra thickness that you need to work on. That's a more consistent crow now. So at this point I could probably try the reed in the chanter. Now this is considered to be a no-no, but you should never blow into a reed. But frankly, at this stage I'm not concerned, so long as I don't touch the end of the reed with the inside of my mouth or my tongue, get any moisture on it at all. I don't mind blowing a little bit of moisture through it at this point, because I'm still gonna, this isn't the finishing stage yet. Actually, that doesn't sound bad at all. And I just felt that the back D was a little soft, and I felt that the pressure was a little hard. Now, I wouldn't be inclined to close the reed down anymore at this stage. I'd be inclined to take a little bit more material off, just to soften it down a little bit and make it easier to play. Don't want to have to squeeze too hard on the bag when you're playing, or use too much air, because everything with the rest of the pipes needs to balance out with the drones and the regulators and everything. So it's just a matter of not taking too much off at this stage, so just tiny little bits and very, very gently. Okay, so I'm getting a slight gurgle on the bottom D there, so I don't want to take any more material off now. Might just pull the bridle towards the tip of the reed, just a fraction. That'll effectively open up the reed a bit, and with a bit of luck should kill the gurgle on the bottom D. Just a fraction more. Now the back D's just a fraction flat. That's not bad. At this stage, because I've been blowing some air through the reed, through my mouth that is, so putting some moisture into the blades, I'll leave the reed there now and put it back in the rack, and I'll come back to that maybe tomorrow, and at that point I'll try it in the pipes rather than in my mouth and do any final adjustments at that point. Thank you.